It's Amy Ward from OTM speaking here, and the OTM team are all on the line today as panelists and co-hosts, and we're all available to answer your questions, and we'll be participating in this session today. So we've got quite a spread of expertise and experience in today's call, so take advantage of it. What we're going to do, excuse me for saying so many times, I've got a few different windows open at my end here. So OTM outreach, we wanted to do this session a little differently today. We've been running the webinars for about 5 or 6 weeks now, and we thought it was a good time to do a bit of a recap and also share some insights that we've been curating. The market and the whole situation has been changing day to day, week to week over that time, and so it's important that we all do a bit of a reset and look at, you know, what we might have been worried about even a month ago could be very different to what we're worried about today, or what the market is worried about today. So this is a good chance to recap on that. For anyone who is new to these calls or hasn't joined one of our webinar sessions previously, it all started with an idea from our team. We really wanted to come together and think, how could we be helpful at this time? And that nugget of an idea has turned into this wonderful platform that we've created, and we may even continue this longer term as a platform for our clients and community. We've really created a shared platform for marketers, communicators, business owners, brand specialists, creatives, anyone involved in marketing or communicating or building a business or a not-for-profit organisation. It's a place to get your questions answered at a time when we're all perhaps a little uncertain about what to do. It's a platform to share our experience and your experience and help others. So this is not just a one-way us telling people what we think is the best way to do things. We're actually really keen for the whole community that we're building here to share their experiences and help each other out. It's an opportunity to learn from peers and specialists. And we've always said, you know, if someone submitted a question and we don't necessarily know the answer, we'll tap into our community of specialists across digital communications, business, different areas to get you the answers to be truly helpful. And we've also been tracking ourselves the research that's available from different organisations, strategy houses, analysts, consulting groups, research bodies, and curating that and sharing that with you as well. We've found it very useful to keep on top of what matters to people in our target markets at the moment, and what matters to people in general, and taking that on board as we figure out our own strategies, and hopefully that helps you guys. So that's what we've built. I'd like to really do a shout out to everybody who has been involved so far, and we've got more people keen to participate in the coming month. So these are photos of all of the OTM team at the moment up the top, who've spent time and creative energy helping to build this program, and the wonderful panelists who have joined us in the past several weeks, people across their own businesses, some small businesses, some independents, some big organisations, and they've all generously shared their time to come and play with us and help the community at large. So a big thank you to all of those people: Wynne, Dave, Kelly, Emily, Flo, Zoe, Lisa. If you're on the line, thank you. If you're listening to a recording, thank you. So today we're going to do a recap on the top questions that have come in over the last month or so. There have been a lot of different questions come in, so of course we can't go through all of them in the time we have. So we've rolled up what we think are probably the hottest questions, the ones that got asked in lots of different ways, and anything else we'll make sure to make available on our website. We'll share some insights from some analysts and researchers. Like I said, we've pulled out some information from Gartner, from Edelman, and from an organisation called The Lab, who've pulled together a special brand Navigator for COVID-19. And there's also some Motek information that we'll be sharing. We will open up to Q&A, like I said, so please pop questions into the chat window or the Q&A window as they come to mind, and we'll get to those when we get to the Q&A session, and we'll give you a quick look at what we've got coming up. It moves every few days as more and more people hear about what we're doing and want to get involved and help the community. So your questions, we've broken them into two sections really. There's the questions that were coming in thick and fast for the here and now. So these were the questions around communicating and marketing in a crisis. And you were concerned with things to do with your customers, you were concerned with your employees, what channels to use, the timing of different announcements and campaigns, the digital tools available to you, what tone, what messaging. There was a real mix of questions that came in that area. And so here's a snapshot of just some of the ones that came in. The ones in yellow are the ones that we'll talk about today because they came in the most. And I guess not surprising, but sort of surprising given that we're all, or a lot of us are marketing and comms people, is so many questions about how should I do events now? How should I do online training? How should I do onboarding of customers? How can I turn things that normally I do in an auditorium or a classroom or a boardroom into events now? Should I still be doing events now? So we've compiled a list of what look to be some of the best online platforms that you can use. That it's quite there's a very long list of tools that are out there, and there's lots of free tools. There's also enterprise grade tools, and it really depends on what sort of organisation and what sort of budget you have. Nia, if you're there on the line, yes, you're unmuted now. You had some experience that I think was really useful to share with people, whether they're in a small or a large organisation, though.
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Great. So basically what I do like on the weekend every week is basically help like a few local churches run their church service. That since now everyone, you can't gather physically, that's what we do online. We move the church services online, and we actually run different events online as well. So just as how like maybe perhaps like your organization is feeling like you're concerned, how do you actually do this? Just want to encourage you guys that like first and foremost, there's a lot of platforms like what Amy just said. It's all available. And what's really great is because everyone acknowledged that it's COVID-19, a lot of enterprise grade platforms are now available for free. So even if you, let's say you're a non-profit organization, a lot of it, all the tools are out there to help you. And the thing that's on top of my mind that I use weekly, it's a platform called Crowdcast. So Crowdcast is actually a platform whereby you can hold seminars, you can hold webinars, you can hold summits and major conferences on it. So I'm talking about perhaps even if you go a global company, you're based in different nations, you can use that. And actually it's free up till I think perhaps it's 500 delegates, then you actually have to pay a certain amount of fee. But other than that, it's good, it's great. It's probably higher quality than what you have in a typical Zoom meeting. So Zoom is probably the simple and basic way of actually holding an event for a start. But if you're thinking about holding a conference like your company has always been doing it for so many years, and you actually want to continue doing it, I would say Crowdcast is the way to go. And another one I would actually recommend is Livestorm. So Livestorm is really good in terms of its video quality and also audio quality. So especially for if you're in the music industry and you actually need like perhaps like your band wants to have a gig or a concert online, Livestorm's the way to go. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Nia. And Dan, thank you for sharing those links in the chat window there. That's very helpful. And there's a slide towards the end where we list up those two platforms as well as several others that you can go and Google and have a look at. I want to turn to this next question, and really this question here and the third one that's highlighted on this page are quite related, and one that we have been getting a lot, and that is, how do we cut through the noise right now? There is so much going on. We're getting inundated with COVID-19 related communications, whether that's in our inboxes or on the TV or the radio, wherever it is that you get your information. So how do I, as a brand or as an organization, cut through that noise? And somewhat related, how do I connect and build relationships? And that's connecting perhaps with people you already know, or how do you build new relationships, at a time when you don't want your business to stop, but it can feel like an awkward time to perhaps be going out there and building new relationships. Noelle and I were just talking about this one before we went live, and I'm going to throw to you, Noelle, because you've got some good suggestions, particularly for that cutting through the noise at this point in time.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I think one of the very first place to start is to ask yourself whether you need to. Time and place is obviously always important in marketing and communicating, but now more than ever, if people are very distracted, and if what you have to offer is not really creating significant value in the current context, then you may end up doing more damage if you try to blast through that noise. I guess the important thing to say is now is not the time to spam your audiences. And it's hard because your business may be suffering greatly right now, and it's a significant challenge, which makes it really tempting to do everything possible to get your message out there. But I think it's important to remember that you could do serious damage to your integrity by whether you're trying to draw some kind of nefarious link where there isn't really one with COVID. I think because it's become a kind of it's just built into our daily vernacular now. I think it's easy for people to forget how serious an issue it is, and that for many people, especially when we're talking global audiences, there are many people around the world who've, there's really significant grief and suffering as a result of this. It's not just a flu. And so if you're trying to draw a link where it's very tenuous, that creating, I guess, is the opposite of authenticity, right? Like I think that's where you can easily seem to be capitalizing. And I think sometimes also you can just be annoying people at a time when your product or service isn't relevant to them. And it's a hard truth. But I think, now might be the time to sit back, to pause, to reflect, take that time that you've been saying for a long time that you need and that you don't have any of. Do your strategizing, do your planning. Excuse me, I'm just suffering from a non-COVID related chest infection. Yeah, I think there's also, if you are talking about cut through, if you do have something that's of value to people at this time, a couple of points I would make. One is try and do things more personally. I was chatting to a friend last night who in my spare time, I do improvised theatre. So that space has changed dramatically because we don't have any of our online connections. But one of our trainers had launched her own business doing her own training within like 3 or 4 weeks of the lockdowns and COVID being a thing. So she's pivoted to find online options. But again, that issue of getting cut through, and what she's found is that I think the message here is to do things more personally. So she reached out to a bunch of regional theatre companies and sent them, direct messages to say, hey, I have this thing of offer, your networks, your people might find it interesting. And she's gotten quite a lot of PR off the back of that because it's of something of real value to those people. So instead of just blasting these wide audiences, because she could have sunk all this money into Facebook, boosting Facebook ads that didn't reach the right people, and instead she spent nothing, and all of her courses have filled up. Obviously that, it has to be, scalable. So sometimes you might need to spend money on things. I think the other thing would be to, at this time, don't sell, storytell. So rather than offering your message, your voice out there in the world, connect with people, find things that connect to them emotionally, that have some kind of, that resonate with people in the right now, and tell those stories. And I think video is a really powerful tool, especially as people are endlessly scrolling through their social platforms these days with all that extra time they have, and because it's the only way we can connect with people. They are continuing to scroll past ads, but they may stop and look at a story.
So if I could roll up some of the things you've said there, very important message I think that you've shared is you don't have to keep marketing, particularly if what it is that you're trying to sell may not be of relevance right now, that it's okay to wait. Or if you really do need to tell those stories, be very mindful about the tone that you're using and the relevance of what you're trying to communicate to your market. But if you are going to go ahead, and we do recommend for a lot of brands, it's absolutely okay to continue marketing and continue communicating, but do it wisely. Tell good stories, make it really relevant, be authentic. And the way to cut through is to engage people with where they are. So think about where your market is now. Where are your people's heads at? What do they need? What's their emotional state? And make your message relevant for that. But then you made a really good point at the end there, Noelle. Also think about your medium. So video is awesome, and it's a great way to connect with people. And it's so much easier these days to put some video out and put some links at the end to some great tools that are out there people can use. Just quickly, because I'm mindful of time, the bit about connecting and building relationships right now, it is, I think the answer would be very similar to the one we've given about creating cut through and content. But if I'm a sales and marketing person that still needs to keep making new connections, should I stop or should I keep going? And if I keep going, how should I be doing it?
I think it's a big question, and it depends so much on your context and what it is that you're offering. And maybe you should stop if your audience is very distracted. Yeah. But maybe you shouldn't if your audience is sitting at home desperately craving your particular solution. If they does your audience have the problem that your solves right now? I think it's worth also calling back something that Kelly Chapman said in last week's webinar, which was he made a point about this isn't the time to go blasting to that list of people you haven't contacted for 2 years. If you don't have something of value to say, just stay quiet. Yeah. I think that were two really powerful points she made.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Noelle. I'm going to move us ahead here. Still some questions related to marketing and communications in the here and now. We ran a session, one of our really early sessions, on internal communications, and we had some great panelists. Rachel Patterson was one of them, Lisa McNally and Zoe Pashley, who are both specialists in internal comms and human resources, gave us some great insights into working with your teams. Now, the world has moved on. That was 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I'm sure we've all, through trial and error and amazing experiments and good things, done some great internal communications. I think the question is still there, though. How do I reassure staff? We've also had these ones around brainstorming and doing remote creativity, working with international teams and international clients. Rachel, I'm going to put you on the spot here, though, as our internal comms specialist. If we could just spend a little bit of time on that one around staff, and if maybe you would have different answers today than you might have had 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amy. Yes, I mean, we've turned the ship around now at this point, and we're now stabilising in a situation that is, everything's going a little slower than it was a couple of weeks ago. So we're now looking at ways that we can keep people informed but not overwhelmed. So looking at solutions like having repositories of information that they can go to find information, making sure those are all kept up to date. We have lots and lots of small messages around reminders about health concerns, reminders about things that you can do, policies that are changing. So we're sort of working out ways to distribute that information in a way that people get the message but they're not overwhelmed by. So we have internal social media channels that we use. We're not really changing channels at this moment. We're using familiar channels, things that people understand and know how to use. There's still in relation to what we talked about last time, which is that we're still trying to hold fast to our values and to the important thing of why we're doing what we're doing, letting people know that they're playing a valuable role, helping people see their position in what we're doing, and importantly with remote teams, connecting. So finding ways to make sure that the community stays together, that everyone feels connected and supported while they're working from home. So those have been so largely what we talked about last time has been what we've been doing, but now we're in a phase of, rather than responding to a crisis, we're managing the long term. So how do we deal with this however long it goes on? So what's the process? We can't be sending stuff out all the time. We need to make sure that people know how to find the information they need. And for people who are not so connected, it's easy to feel like your inbox is full and you're getting so much information. Some people are not, so they're not getting so much information. So how to make sure that those people can go to the information that they need without sending millions of emails. So
yeah, and that's a really good point, because we're all professional services workers. We're all used to communicating digitally and getting access to information, and can sometimes probably feel overwhelmed. It's easy to overlook that there is a massive cohort of workers and people in the population who they're not there all day to day. So how do you keep communicating to those people? And I love the way you're saying that it's not necessarily about sending out alert after alert after alert anymore, because that immediate crisis or acuteness is perhaps passing, but it's about having a solid repository or place where people can go, and making sure they know that they go there and are encouraged, I guess, to go there from time to time, so that we don't become complacent or disconnected again with important information. Thanks, Rachel. That was really useful. I'm going to move to our next set of questions, whilst we're still talking about the immediate crisis communications. We talk a lot about digital, and digital is, it's where it's at for marketers and communicators and creatives these days, but we shouldn't forget the offline strategies, and actually we sort of segued a little bit into that just now, Rachel, with what you were saying, but we did have some questions come in from people who work in organisations where their audience are not necessarily connected. They might be an older cohort, or they might be people that don't have access to systems or technology, or it's just not their way of connecting. So how do you get in touch with those people? And from our perspective, we think there is still a place for the integration of digital and some of the more traditional or offline methods of communication. So, think radio, think direct mail, think letterbox drops, print media. The print media industry, yes, it's taking a hit at the moment, but there are still relevant publications out there, and community news publications, industry news publications that you can get your message into. And it comes back to, if you've got a message that you need to communicate at a time like now, and that you think your audience are going to be interested in it, then use some of those other channels that are offline to get to those people. It's okay if you can afford it. You could still be doing outdoor advertising and things like that. If you can't afford it, there are lower budget ways of doing it. Look at your database. If you've got a mailing list, now is as good a time as any to go, oh my goodness, my mailing list needs updating. How do I get in touch with my audience? So that's, again, it's not rocket science, but it's some things that maybe we forget when we're all focused on digital, that there are other ways of getting in touch with people. Even complementary providers. You might be reaching an audience who has a connection with their local pharmacy or grocery store. You might be able to put some information into a home delivery box if it's relevant, say for an older age group or something like that. So just, think outside the box a little bit with how you want to communicate with people.
Suzie just made a point about picking up the phone as well. I think
yes. I forgot the phone.
I think we're all doing so much digital stuff at the moment that it's easy to be honest, I love a phone call. I get through my day like this, and I might get 2 work-related phone calls during the day, but I mean, I don't want something completely random, but especially if there's that genuine attempt and bid to connect with me, to have a conversation, to have a chat, and then talk to me about whatever
Yes.
it is.
And that's a really good point. Picking up the phone and talking, particularly to your customers or your team members. If you've got a customer base that it's not going to be weird if you pick up the phone and call them. Human connection, have a conversation with people. Great point, Noelle.
Suzie.
So then we had some questions coming in about looking to the future. So you're also concerned about, yes, what's happening in the here and now, how do I react quickly, but what is the future going to hold, and what should we as marketers and communicators and leaders in our field be doing, thinking about the future? Now, I don't think any of us has a crystal ball in what the next 6 or 12 months is going to look like, but we know it's going to be different than what it was 6 months ago. Some things will go back to normal, some things won't, and we've really got to be mindful of what that future is going to look like. So some of the questions we got, were how do I prepare for a future post-COVID? If I survive, what do I need to do to be ready to come out the other side? Are things going to be more focused on local? All those things we're all probably thinking about in some way or another. I think there is so much that you could be doing. To distill it down, when you've got the space and the time at the moment, the best way you could be preparing for the future is to be thinking about, okay, what is my strategy for the next 2 to 4 quarters? You might have the space to think longer than that, but what is my next 6 to 12 months going to look like for my business or for my marketing program? And now is the time to be thinking about that. Now is the time to be thinking about, am I going to have to be resetting budgets? Has my cash flow changed? Has our pipeline changed? It might have reduced. For a lot of companies, it may have. So you might need to be thinking really carefully about where you're allocating your marketing and branding budgets. You need to be thinking about the research and the insights that you need to know about your market. And I'm doing a mini MBA at the moment with Mark Ritson through the ADMA, and really good takeaway that he had in the Q&A this week was one around research, and that is, be careful what research you build plans on at the moment, because the research that's happening now is really useful for the here and now. Consumer sentiment, buying patterns, those sorts of things, but it might not be relevant in even 3 months' time. So do your research, stay on top of the market, but don't necessarily hang your hat on what people are saying now as to what's going to be happening in 6 or 12 months' time. So as marketers and business leaders, it's our job to be staying abreast of what's going on with the people that we're targeting and connecting with. So how to prepare, do that planning, but remember that you've got to still be agile and perhaps have some rolling plans. Do some housekeeping, do some hygiene work. If now might be the time that you can be cleaning up your databases, cleaning up your systems, getting the right tech stack for your marketing organization, stopping things that weren't working, but you just kept doing them because that's what you always did. They're probably some of the tips that we would give you. Anyone else on the team have anything really pertinent they'd like to add there? Because there is just so much we could think about for post-COVID.
I'd jump in and say, oh, you go, Dan.
Oh, sure. So working with a particular government department, we're reevaluating whether or not our audience needs to be, whether or not we should focus our workforce on Twitter, and whether or not that's been a valuable platform for our audience to engage on. So we've just done a bit of a social media audit, working out which channel is worthy of our time, and just cutting back some of the head hours that we work through on that. So we haven't been getting a certain amount of engagement from Twitter. Now might be a good time to sort of tap out, or even just pivot and change the amount of content that we put on there. So we're changing our social media strategy a little bit now.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
I'd also say, like, some things that I kind of think are things that you often put on the back burner, and you think, oh, I'll get to that one day, or you think, I wish I had time for that. Particularly what comes to mind is diving into your data, your customer data, your channel data. I think it's something that we are often so busy just run, go, that unless we have dedicated data people, that doesn't get done very often. And so you might just get the high level data, like you take the cream and you make a lot of judgments and decisions based on that. Well, if you've got the time, you can dive deeper into your data right now. If you need someone, who knows how to cut data, find that person to like bring them in as a freelancer to really give you some really valuable insights. Be careful not to go finding red herrings in your data and drawing conclusions that aren't necessarily there. So make sure you're doing it properly. But I think data, and I think the other one is a forward plan of content. We always say we wish we had we're running to catch up with our content, and it's always feels like it's this backlog. Well, build your pipeline, and then you can have it all there sitting in folders ready to put out. All that stuff that is this kind of timeless stuff that you can continue.
Evergreen is what we call it, Noelle.
Pardon?
We've been calling it our evergreen content.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll continue to maintain relevance with our market. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. So yes, the future, who knows what the future is going to look like. Like we said, there'll be some things that are different and some things that go back to being, what we're very used to. But use the opportunity now to be ready for when when things do keep changing and lockdowns are lifted. And in 6 months' time, our focus is perhaps closer to business as usual. Use this time to get ahead of your competitors, to keep those real connections with your client base, and do the right thing with the market. Be a good brand, and you'll reap the rewards of it.
Amy, David mentioned something in the chat a little way back about that I think is relevant here as well, about going out to your audience and asking them, what are you interested in, what matters to you right now. I think that's, again, if you've got some time and in preparing for the future, it's a really good opportunity to really get to know your audience, start profiling them. This is a time that you can really understand what matters to them and build a much deeper picture of them as full humans than we might have ever done before.
Really good point. And so, yeah, you're talking about looking at your data, but also going out and getting those questions answered from your client base is an excellent thing to do. Thanks, Noelle. So that's all the questions that we're recapping on today. The full list of questions will be up on our website with the more detailed answers. I'm going to jump in now to a collection of market insights that we've gathered up and different sources that we've been looking at. The next 3 or 4 slides are pretty current. They're information that we've curated literally in the last couple of days. Some of it was from research that was done maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I'll point that out as we go through it. But most of it is pretty here and now. And if you look at anything we've said from calls, even 5 weeks ago, you'll see that there really has been a shift in things like consumer sentiment and buying patterns and engagement patterns with people, just even in that short period of time. So I can't stress enough how important it is to stay on top of, for whatever your particular market is, stay on top of where they're at, so you can be a better brand again. So this set of information, and I shout out to the lab and Nature. We don't have any relationship with them, but they've done a fantastic job of pulling this thing called the COVID-19 Brand Navigator together. And every few days they're putting up new information. The link to their source is at the bottom of this slide. Like I said, we have no affiliation. We're just happy to share this information. It's quite useful. Right now, I think this came out yesterday from them. Some key points: the intensity of concern across Australia about coronavirus and COVID-19 appears to be at its lowest point since they started tracking this sentiment. Perceptions of government remain stable with confidence high. Mental health matters. People are really concerned about their own and their families and their employees and the general community's well-being, and it's a genuine concern about mental health and where people are at, and that is something I think brands need to take on board. There's real innovation opportunities coming out, and some of these things may or may not be relevant to your business, but I would encourage all of us to think about what are some of the practical things that this necessity is creating the need for innovation. And they talk about things like the dining desk. There's been an increase in cooking and baking. I know in my household I'm probably going to come out 10 kilos heavier after this working from home. My daughter is an excellent baker, and we invested in a Thermomix a year or two ago. This is not a plug for Thermomixes, but the volume of cakes in our household has skyrocketed, and I've got no team to share them with at the moment, so it's just me and 3 others eating them every day. So kitchen appliances, electronics, camera equipment, all those things, comfy clothing. So this is not rocket science, but there's innovation opportunities out there, and businesses who are well positioned to take advantage of that are doing that. And those who do it in a sensitive way will prosper longer term. And this leads to a point you mentioned earlier, Noelle, that there is a trend in bringing your whole self to work. So, I mean, all of us now sitting on this panel are in some form of a home office. Nobody has walked in on us yet, but it might happen, and nobody will really mind. So there is a trend in bringing your whole self to work, and it's good for relationships, and it's good for that connection with your teams. The next set of information comes from Edelman. Now, I do apologise if you can't see all of the words here, but they came out with 2 research reports, and this is the one that some of these are a few weeks old, and some of them are global sets of information, but I think they're relevant for us here, and they're still relevant now as much as they were when the research was done a few weeks ago. Stop selling and start solving. So don't just go out and sell. It's, to your point again earlier, Noelle, offer solutions, offer stories. And if you can, and if it's suitable for your business, offer tangible and fast-moving solutions that will help people at this time. If you can, and if it makes sense for your business, shift production to goods that meet the challenges of COVID-19. And that could be, for those of us in the services industry, that could be shift your production to information or education that also meet the challenges at this time. Generally, people are not paying attention to new products right now. So unless you're doing something that's designed to help right now, it actually might be the right time to wait for that product launch till it is the right time. Update customers on changes to your operation. So people want to know, if they're a customer of yours, they do want to know, have your opening hours changed? Can I come into your store? Do you now offer delivery? So be transparent and clear with that information. People are actually keen for brands to partner with government to better deal with the crisis. So people are open to public-private partnerships if they think it's going to help us get services or solutions that we need at the moment. And people actually hope brands will provide the safety net where government is unable. So we're probably talking about bigger brands in this context, but even smaller organisations can fit in here. People really do hope that the big organisations and institutions around, even if they're not government, are going to somehow help us get through this situation. Really important one, the second last one, how a brand responds now will most likely have a huge impact on how people respond to that brand in the future. So don't be a bleep right now. Don't be opportunistic. Do the right thing now, or do less of things that are unnecessary, and people will actually remember that, whether that's actively remember or subconsciously remember. And definitely brands perceived to be putting profit over people will lose their trust forever. So some great stuff there from Edelman. There's a very large report that you can go and read, which you can find at this link here if you're interested to know more. And then some really practical stuff from Gartner. Gartner has a service specifically for marketers, and they have some great resources. I've just pulled this out of something that they put out in recent times. Immediate actions for chief marketing officers, not chief medical officers, amid the COVID-19 situation. So the fact is there will be budget cuts. So their advice is very quickly you need to implement a cost optimization plan. That doesn't mean take a negative approach and just go and cut spending everywhere, but it does mean be smart. You're in business and you need to think about where you're spending your money. And if you can, depending on the size of your organisation, they talk about assembling a tiger team. So get a small team of people, or if you're a sole operator, this might be yourself or you and your accountant or you and your business advisors, get a tiger team together to look at your marketing plans, look at your operations budgets, and be really smart about where that money is going to go over the next 6 to 12 months, and do that quickly. You don't keep spending money on advertising, that digital set and forget advertising that you might have going. Now's the time to look at that and go, do I really need it? Can I pause? Operate with integrity and trust. That's a familiar theme from all the places we're getting insights from. And don't wait. They recommend a 4-step action plan. Do scenario planning. So actually sit down and spend some time and think about the different scenarios. So, as a marketer, you might be someone that's you've always done events, and that you've got a pipeline that brings people through events. You've got to sit down and do scenario planning for, well, maybe our events can come back online in September. But what if they can't? What if our events can't come back online until March 21? What do we do? So think about those different scenarios for your organisation. If you're in another industry that's had to shut down operations, think about how long it will be until you might get your clients back. Listen for changes in customer sentiment and behaviour, and this again goes to following the insights that are out there, talking to your customers. Pick up that phone and talk to key customers every day and take note of what they're saying. Don't just ask and then think about your next question. Ask and listen to the answer. Anticipate operational impacts and adapt your marketing plans. So somewhat might seem like simple advice, but really important things that Gartner is suggesting there. And I threw this one in this morning. It's not so much a market insight, but I've always had a bit of a crush on the marketing or the Motek landscape that Scott Brinker produces. I don't know Scott. I think he's based in the US somewhere. But he does this thing every year where he pulls together the Motek stack, and it can seem overwhelming, but it's a really, really handy resource if you don't know where to go to find out what systems to use in your business. And the Motek 5,000 surpassed 5,000 several years ago, and as of this morning when it was announced, it's up to 8,000. So it's crazy the amount of systems that are out there, but also amazing. So there's a picture of it, and this year they've actually done it in clusters, which I think looks really cool. And maybe we could get some good old-fashioned big printing done and stick it up on our walls. But if you go to his website, motek5000.com, you can actually download the data that's behind this. There's a spreadsheet that has all of these different tools in it. So really, really handy resource. And while we're on resources, I'm motoring through now because we don't have much time left. Some top tips that came from our panellists throughout the last 5 to 6 weeks of calls. It's okay to wait if that's what suits your business, and it's okay to keep going. So don't feel like you've just got to do what everyone else is doing. If everyone else is making videos and doing cool content, but you don't feel it's the right time for you, that's okay. Make well-being a priority, and that came out, I think, with all of our panellists, and is a really good point. And it's nice to see that no matter what organisation or industry you're in, people are concerned about everybody's well-being. Be brave. Take a risk, experiment. It's okay to do that. Move fast, be agile, but don't compromise planning. And I think Emily Anderson had a really good point there. We were talking about events and campaigns and things in our call last week, and she made a really good point that it's really easy to set up campaigns and come up with ideas sometimes, but don't compromise the planning. Spend the time, test, plan, do the right promotions. Just because we're moving fast doesn't mean we need to be lax in the way that we do things and compromise quality. The idea is really important, and this was Emily again last week. She comes from an advertising background, and the idea is everything. So, come up with a really good idea. Test it, check it out, but then run that idea through. Don't just go with what you're already doing all the time. Listen and ask. We've talked about a lot today. Use this time now to reflect on the why for your business, and this came out a lot in our conversation with Wynne and David a few weeks ago. And rediscover why you're here. What's your clarity? What's your purpose? What's your mission? It's a great time to be doing that in our businesses and in our marketing programs. Be authentic, be clear, be transparent, be helpful. Don't be annoying, just be helpful, and be appropriate. So some top tips that came in from people. Some of our favourite tools we will make this available on our website, and you'll also be able to access the recording of this presentation. So don't feel like you've got to write down all of these tools right now, but there are so many amazing tools out there that you can use. And like Nia said earlier, some of them are being made available free now or at lower prices to help. Let's open up in the 10 minutes that we've got left to any Q&A. I haven't been monitoring the chat window. Have we had any questions come in? Just having a look here. Yes, we have had some questions come in. David Norris. Hi, Dave. Thanks for joining us. I think there is a question here. That's a great question, and let's open this up to everybody who is on the line. I'd really encourage you to answer in the chat window or put your hand up if you'd like to speak. What are you interested in? We're in a phase of acceptance, so what's next? Love to get thoughts from everybody who's on the line on what they think is next. I'll keep monitoring the chat here to see if any answers come into that. Yeah, great. Any questions or comments from our panel while we're waiting for attendees to put any questions through?
I think I interpreted that question, David, so correct us if I'm wrong about this, in that that it's an opportunity for us to go out to our audiences to ask them about what matters to them right now, to help us form that picture of what comes next after COVID. Is that what you meant by that question, David?
Hopefully he's still listening.
Yes, well, that's good.
Yes, he says yes. You get the tick.
Well, I think I sort of mentioned that before. I don't know if others have thoughts, but I think I agree. This is definitely a time to go out to your audience, use that opportunity to do some more in-depth audience profiling and analysis.
Yeah, and he makes the point here that people are interested in good developmental content right now. Depending on your industry, you might even be starved of it. So it's a good time to be doing that.
I think it's a really interesting point that I've seen. I don't know if other people have seen them, but I've been seeing a lot of these not really memes, but these things going around saying, you know, why are we craving getting back to, you know, normal? Normal was never normal, and normal. There were a lot of problems with what normal was. So it may be that things aren't. It's not just going to be a slingshot that ends up back in its initial place. Things could look really different. So we don't know how consumer habits are going to change, how what matters to us, what things we want in our life changes, what information we crave changes. So I think that's going to be really interesting as marketers and communicators to just kind of watch and be open to the idea that our old ways of thinking we may need to all relearn this again, like learn a new way of doing this.
Yeah, I think in certain areas that will definitely, and I hope in some areas it will be the case, because it's nice to, sometimes it's nice to slow down a little bit and reconnect with people. That's something that I'd like to see continue in my world. I'm not sure if it will, as things ramp up again and we're not working from home all the time. But then again, other things have ramped up and that's been great as well. Anything else that the panel would like to add today? Because we haven't had any more questions come in at this point. Okay. Dan, yes, you make a point about professional development. It is, if people are finding that their work has slowed or their market has slowed a little, it is a good time for professional development. And there are some organisations similar to the online services that are out there. I'm noticing some training organisations offering bite-sized information or education packages, perhaps lower fees than they normally would. I know I'm taking the opportunity to do this mini MBA with Mark Ritson online. There's lots of different things out there that we could all be doing. Industry bodies that you could be joining. You know, for those of us in marketing or communications, there's things like the Australian Marketing Institute, the IABC, the ADMA, there's graphic design and design industry. Dan, I know you're active with the Design Institute of Australia. You know, there's lots of things that people could be joining and doing professional development with. We might wrap up shortly. I just want to draw your attention to next month. So we started this series without any grand long-term plans, but we've been getting a good response, and we've been getting some wonderful panellists coming to join us. So I'm pleased to say that we've already lined up a few more people to talk to us in May, and I don't have all of their names up on this slide here. Some more people have offered this week, and a shout out to Jo Hassan if she's on the line. She's also offered to come and join us and pep us all up in one of the calls during May. We've got Louisa Dahl, who heads up Interactive Minds. If anyone in Brisbane hasn't heard of Interactive Minds and they're part of the Brisbane marketing or comms or digital community, I encourage you to go and have a look at what Louisa's done with that. It's an amazing community. We've got Isabel Taylor, who is a content specialist, now working with News Corp. She was with Seven for many years prior to that. In the middle of May, I think it's going to be on the 15th of May, we'll have Warwick Sweeney joining us, and he'll be bringing a really interesting perspective. Warwick's actually a Chief Technology Officer with one of our partner companies, Integral Technology Solutions. He does a heap of work in digital experience programs and digital transformation programs, but with the lens of the customer and marketing. So he'll have some great insights. We're hoping to get Danielle Sidney from UE to come and talk to us. She's a digital engagement specialist. And Neethi, who is a marketing and comms director and has been participating in several of these sessions, has also kindly offered her time. We've got some folks from the not-for-profit sector who are keen to come and talk, so we might do a session focused on aged care and community services and not-for-profits. And we've also got some folks from the college and education community who'll come and join us as well. So those will keep being announced, so just keep connected with us, and we'll share that information as it comes to light. Thank you to everybody on the panel who has joined us today, the OTM team. Big shout out for all of your inputs here and your expertise. I've just popped up on the screen the link to sending us emails with questions or looking, excuse me, I've lost my voice, looking at all the answers and information that we're sharing. That will be available online at any time for you to go in. I can see a few things still coming in on the chat line. Yep, that's great. All right, I think we'll wrap it here. My computer just told me it's already 2:00. So thank you all for joining, and let us know if there's anything that you'd particularly like us to talk about in future weeks.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks for everyone who attended.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks, and thanks everybody who joined us online.